What's up everyone, welcome back to another video here on this channel, Royal Horror. I'm Thiago and welcome back to another deep dive of another franchise. In this case we're going to talk about Cabin Fever, and the main reason why I wanted to talk about this franchise is because it's summer, it's hot out there, really hot actually. Everyone is drinking water, everyone is taking care of their skin, everyone's skin is deteriorating, so what a better chance to talk about a franchise that has water as the horror element than Cabin Fever during summers. In case you didn't know, the way that I follow this video, the structure is that I do my ranking and the deep dive at the same time. So I will go from worst to best film as I talk about them and the franchise overall. I will give important info about like data, about sales, about fun facts, about the production, the acting, all of that involved the making of these films. And also I will talk about like my personal opinion, how do I feel about these films. Also we're going to talk about stuff like the cinematography, the characters, the acting, the script, the set design, the practical effects, so all the magic that is behind filmmaking. If that sounds fun to you, welcome to the Cabin Fever deep dive and ranking. And coming at number 4, that will be Cabin Fever 2 from 2009 called Spring Fever. This time is spreading. A high school prom faces a deadly threat virus, a flesh-eating one that is praised by a popular brand of bottle of waters. Did you know that the director and the cinematographer of this film are just the little duo of Ty West and Elliot Rocket? And in case you didn't know, those two made basically this little trio of films that I don't think anyone has heard of, and we're talking about Pearl, X, and the future horror film Maxine. So yes, you heard me right, Ty West's debut is basically Cabin Fever 2. Right now, Cabin Fever 2 stands on a ranking of IMDb of 4.3 out of 10, Rotten Tomatoes of a 16% audience, and also on Letterboxd it starts on 2.2 out of 5. And honestly, I think it's well deserved, and we're going to talk about it once I talk about this film. And also, it had a budget of $5 million. And in case you didn't know, this film went directly into DVD because late 2000s, going directly into DVD was like the most popular thing to do. And a fun fact that I found about this is that apart that going directly into DVD, it did DVD domestic sales of around $710,000. So that's a huge loss, because for a film that had a budget of $5 million to sell just not even $800,000, that's a huge loss. Another fun fact about Ty West with this film is that he almost got sued and he had to go court because the producers of Carrie, like the original Carrie, were suing him because of the similarities with the climax of the film. And another fun fact, the last one for this film, is that Eli Roth, I don't know how to pronounce his name, I'm sorry, he did not want to take part of this film because he hated the script, which it doesn't make sense because the script from the first film is not the strongest, but obviously he wrote it, so he will think it's the best one ever. Now, talking about this film, I have to say that I absolutely did not like Cabin Fever 2. I just think this film is so gross, but not because it's a Cabin Fever film, it's gross, you know, like we have so many sex scenes everywhere that doesn't make sense with teenagers. Like, teenagers don't act that way, so I don't understand why Cabin Fever 2 was trying to do that. Also, I think this film has the worst pace out of the whole franchise. I think the pacing of this film is so long, so dragging. Like, even when the climax of the film comes up at the prom at the school, you just don't care because you just are so tired from this film. Like, you don't really root for the characters because, like I said before, they're just horny teenagers for no reason. So you just don't really care if they die, if they get the virus, if they don't. A few things that I have to give about this film is that honestly I appreciated that it was different from the first film because we're not just again on a cabin, so that was cool. Also, I actually like obviously the body horror and the practical effects that are not related to the grotesque things that I said before, but when we have the virus and the blood, I think that was pretty cool. I loved how everything was so practical, that it was not CGI. And honestly, if you are a fan of Carrie, I think you might like the climax of this film, because honestly, like I said before, a lot of Carrie vibes. And finally, it's that I love that Cabin Fever 2 has a gay couple, like randomly, which I really loved. Coming at number 3, and this is where my unpopular opinions start, because this place is occupied by the original Cabin Fever from 2002. Terror in the Flesh. A group of 5 college graduates rent a cabin in the woods and begin to fall victim to a horrifying flesh-eating virus, which attracts the unwanted attention of the homicidal locals. So as we know, this was directed by Eli Roth, and we know him because of Green Inferno and the Hostel films, you know. So this guy is pretty popular in the horror community, and Cabin Fever is his debut, like his first long feature film. The cinematographer is called Scott Evan, and we know him because of films like Underworld Awakening from 2012, The Darkest Hour from 2011, and Deliver Us from Evil from 2014. And also, when it comes to data, this film starts on a 5.6 out of 10 on IMDb. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 62% on verified and also a 44% on audience reviews. On Letterboxd, it starts on a 2.8 out of 5. When it comes to the budget, this film had a budget of $1,500,000, which is pretty big, because honestly this was Eli Roth's debut, so for him to have this budget, that was impressive. And worldwide it made a gross of $31 million, so that's a huge difference. That's like $30 million difference, and I think that's pretty much a huge difference, especially because of the era that this movie came out. So I have a few fun facts about this film that I found pretty interesting, and it's that first one is that it got nominated to 15 different nominations, including Best Makeup, Best Screenplays, and also at Worst Film at the prestigious awards such as the Fangoria Censo Awards. However, Cabin Fever managed to win 3 awards, and those includes the Best Score at the Fangoria Censo Awards, Best Feature at the Showcase Film Festival, and the Best Makeup. Now, another fun fact is that the director Eli Roth originally got the idea for this movie while working on Iceland on a horse farm. He got such a bad skin infection from the rotting in the farm that his face broke out in sores, bled and peeled off when he shaved. Also, this film was ranked number 1 as the most gruesome movie disease of all time by the Total magazine in February 2013. So imagine, that's a huge title to have on your film, like number 1 worldwide. And for me, my favorite fun fact about this film is that Eli Roth struggled to sell his script to different film studios due to how different it was from that era. During the late 90s and early 2000s, slashers were at the top of the game, especially after the success of the Scream trilogy. Many studios told Eli Roth to make Cabin Fever more like a Scream. So that's pretty, like, even if you hate Eli Roth, you gotta give this guy the commitment for this film, because that's when you love your little baby. Like, I would honestly do the same, because he honestly got like called off just because his film was not as popular, or just because his film didn't have the same vibes as the Scream trilogy. Like, imagine being your film got called off just because of that. So I really admire and I really appreciate how he fought for his own film, how hard he believed in Cabin Fever. But also, something that I don't really appreciate about Eli Roth is that he really struggled to sell this film just because of the use of the N-word by many white characters on this film. I understand why this film is loved. Like, if you grew up with this film, if you grew up in the early 2000s and stuff, I'm sure this film will have traumatized many people out there because of how graphic it is from that era. I honestly appreciate how unique this film is, because this is a early 2000 films, and the fact that it's a completely unique concept about a deadly virus, that's pretty unique for me, and I really admire that. The storyline of this film is entertaining. Like, the characters, they are fine, like they are early 2000 characters, so you cannot expect much. But honestly, the practical effects, the SFX, is what I like about this film. I think The gore is fantastic, the way the bodies are deteriorating is fantastic. Something that I hated about this film, like I said before, honestly, the use of the N-word so many times, like if he's saying good morning and it's like, why? Just so weird, especially because it's said by many white characters. That just doesn't make sense. And honestly, the ending of this film is like one of the worst endings in horror, because what was that? And most importantly, something that I hated the most about this film, and it's such a shame because if we didn't include the N-word and if it didn't include so many homophobic jokes, I would have easily given this film 4 stars and a half. But because of that, I ended up giving 2.5. Because this film is so homophobic for no reason. It has the jokes of, don't be gay, that's so gay. You took care of your skin, that's so gay. Like why? Like it's 2002, like I understand the era, blah blah blah, but come on, like even 2002, I don't know, I just don't get it. So we're gonna talk about the last 2 films. So as soon as I say my number 2 place, you will know which one is my favorite, but that's fine. At the second place, coming at number 2, we have Cabin Fever 3, Patient Zero from 2014. The Birth of Fear. A group of friends head to the deserted Caribbean island for a surprise overnight bachelor party, only to discover that the island isn't deserted. It's actually the home to a secret medical facility. Not only that, there is something wrong with the water surrounding the island. So the director of this film is Kerr Andrew, and you might know him because he directed a short of the ABCs of Death. Also, the cinematographer is Norm Lee, and you might know him for a film called Afflicted. And the writer is Jake Wade Wall, and you might know him from films like The High Chair from 2007, the remake, and Jacob's Ladder 2019 remake. So this film has a remake writer, you know. So this film right now, it stands on a 4.4 out of 10 on IMDb. It also stands on Rotten Tomatoes on 20% and 14%. And on Letterboxd, it starts on a 2.0 out of 5. And honestly, this might sound unpopular, but I think this film deserves better than that, because I just don't understand the hate behind this film. And maybe the hate is because the sequel was not too popular, and honestly, as people were growing up, the first one, the original, was not being recognized as the best horror. So having a third part out of 2 films that are not so much loved, honestly, it's obvious that this movie got affected by that. This film had a budget of just $1 million, and honestly, I really appreciate how much they managed to do with just $1 million, because you would think that $1 million is too much for this film, but once you have to do practical effects, locations, $1 million is not enough. So really respectable how much they did. Just like the second film, this film went directly into DVD and Blu-rays, but it had a little run of theatrical releases, and between that and the DVD sales, it just got around 328,439. So that's a huge loss for the producers and director of this film, because not even $500,000 for a budget that it costed $1 million, that's a huge loss. So again, the fun facts about this film is that the first one is that a 4th entry in the series titled Cabin Fever Outbreak was planned to be filmed back to back with Patient Zero, but it was scrapped. And the main reason why it was scrapped is because of the huge loss that this third film had. So obviously the 4th film got scratched. Another fun fact is that it got nominated twice to the same category, which was the best makeup and practical effects. It competed against films like Starry Eyes and The Taking of Deborah Logan, but obviously it lost because of the film Death Note 2. Another fun fact is that Sean Astin, who plays Porter in the film, is probably best known for his portrayal of Samwise Gamgee in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So that's huge, and maybe the $1 million went directly to this guy, because imagine having that actor on Cabin Fever 3. Just my quick thoughts about this film is that honestly this film, I think it's very underrated, because honestly I didn't have a bad time with this film. I think this film has the strongest concept out of the whole franchise, because it really captured and it really talks about the deadly virus as it should. Like quarantine is mentioned, the pandemic is mentioned, All of that obviously is called patient zero, so we have a lot of patients being infected by this. Even though if it has comedy and stuff, I really appreciate the way this movie talks about how serious this can be to the whole world. Which brings me to the point that the opening of this film is amazing, is gorgeous. Like, the opening of this film is what kept me interested to watch the rest of this film. And lastly, we're gonna talk about my favorite cabin fever film. And I don't know if I should be ashamed, but that will be the remake Cabin Fever from 2016. You can't run from what's inside. In this grisly remake of the 2002 horror hit, 5 college friends rent an isolated woodland cabin for a party, but their fun quickly ends when the group is exposed to a hideous flesh-eating virus, and survival becomes the name of the game. This was directed by Travis Sarwini, and poor guy, he hasn't directed anything else. Also, the cinematographer is Kevin Kelly. He also hasn't worked in other films, so it's understandable. And the writer is Eli Roth. So yes, you heard me right. The director and writer of the original literally made a remake out of his own film just like 13 years later. For what? So this film, the data of this film is that it stands on a 3.7 out of 10 on IMDb. Like, nobody has reviewed this film on Rotten Tomatoes, so it stands on a 0%, also on a 12% with audience. On Letterboxd it stands on a 1.8 out of 5. So as you can see by this movie is hella hated in the community. And again, I'm laughing because I'm having this film as my favorite, so insult me, it's fine, I deserve it. I don't. Also, this film, a fun fact is that this film is considered in Rotten Tomatoes one of the worst films ever, and like in the top 50. This film had a budget of $2 million, which is huge, especially because it's a remake and stuff. And what wild, this film, because it went into the theaters between 2015 and 2016, what wild, this film only made $115,000. So imagine that. It makes sense why the director like went bankruptcy, because from $2 million budget to not even make $130,000, that's a huge loss. Few fun facts that I have about this film is that it got nominated 4 times in the same category, which was best sequel, best remake. Like, those films were in the same category, but obviously Cabin Fever lost, and imagine it lost against films like Insidious 3 and The Conjuring 2. So I gotta give to Cabin Fever the remake that it was in the same position as The Conjuring and Insidious. Like, now the last fun fact that I have about this film is that someone known as Megan Fox was almost casted on this film for the role of Marcy, but obviously Megan Fox immediately denied the offer because of how sexualized this character was. Even this character has a whole naked scene in this film. So Megan Fox obviously didn't like that because she was really tired, because as we know, this poor actress has always been sexualized, even since she was a minor, which is horrible and disgusting. But the main reason why I like this film is, honestly, first of all, I watched this movie at the cinemas, so I have that bias with me. Also, I think this movie has the best cinematography out of the whole franchise, and even though it has a $2 million budget, like, the camera work is insane. I love the different shots. I love how rich this movie looks. Like, this is such a Blu-ray film, you know. Also, I really appreciate and I absolutely love the practical effects in this film. For me, they are the best ones in the whole franchise. I think the blood looks so grotesque, so gruesome. Like, this film is so gory. I found that really beautiful, and I think it's a huge upgrade from the other films. Also, out of the whole franchise, I think this movie is the best one that portrays body deterioration and the way that the body changes because of a virus infection and stuff. So I really appreciated that. It's the movie that it looks the more realistic. It's the film that really makes you think this might happen to you. And lastly, one thing that I really love about this film is that honestly, it doesn't have racist and homophobic jokes at all. So it looks like Eli Roth learned from his mistake from the first film and the bad feedback that he received from that film. And also, I'm just gonna leave the comments that I received from you about this franchise, so you can stop the video, read the comments. I think they're very interesting, they're really different one from the other. And that was it, that was my deep dive and ranking of this franchise. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that maybe you can watch this franchise after watching this video, because I know this franchise is not the most popular ever, or maybe after watching this I try my best to not talk about with so much spoilers. Maybe you will be interested in watching and checking it out. If you do, please let me know in the comment section below. And thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and give a like, that will really help me so much. And please take care, have a nice end of the week, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.
We are on the verge of a global pandemic. You, patient zero.